We read in this week's parsha, Nitzavim. Atim nitzav mayom kulchem lefnei Hashem Elokechem. You all stand today together, lefnei Hashem Elokechem, before your God. And it speaks about all the segments of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, Roshechem, Shiftechem, the leaders, the heads of the tribes, Eknechem, the elders, Shotrechem, the law enforcers, Kol Yisrael. And what is this all about? La'ovcha b'vriyas Hashem Elokech, will also to enter into the covenant of Hashem, of God and His oath, Asher Hashem Elokech koris imcha yom, which God is concluding with you today. What is the portion? Because Atem Nitzavim, you stand. Atem Nechnosim Lebris, you're entering into covenant. What's the Nitzavim? You're standing. So the Midrash says, explains, that we find that suffering and punishment came upon many nations of the world and came upon us throughout history. That's where we were exiled. Why, when the non-Jews, when they're punished, they're deemed for total annihilation, and yet we exist, despite the fact that we also were punished as severely. When suffering comes upon the nations of the world, they bolt because of them, and they don't attribute it to God Himself. They bolt and they don't mention God's name. Shenemar, Shvo chamoscha lagoyim, you should let your wrath pour out on the nations of the world who don't know you. When the suffering comes upon them, they don't call out to God for salvation. And they just continue becoming more involved in what they've been doing. Or they go and they seek out idolatry, pagan worship. But the Jewish people, when suffering comes upon them, they submit, they become subdued, umispalin, and they pray to God. They become subdued and they submit and they pray to God. So when does one pray? When one realizes and recognizes that it's not himself, that you can't do it yourself. Without God, you cannot survive. God has to be part of the equation. Not only is He part of the equation, He's the total equation. Otherwise, you cannot recover. It will not get better, it will get worse. Shenemar, Sora v'yogon emtzo, when suffering and angst comes upon a person, Shem Hashem Ekro. These are words of David HaMelech. Kos Yeshua Seso, I will lift the cup of salvation. When is that? When Sora v'yogon emtzo. When problems, issues, suffering comes upon us, that's the Kos Yeshua says, I will lift the cup of salvation. Ub'Shem Hashem Ekra, I will call out to God. So therefore, what is the difference between the Jew and the non-Jew? The non-Jew suffering comes upon him, rather than turning upward to God and recognizing who he has to pray for, where he has to seek his fortune from, he doesn't. And therefore, let your wrath, David HaMelech says, pour forth upon the nations of the world who don't know you. Shem Hashem lo karo, they don't call the name of God. But Klal Yisrael, it's just to the contrary. We call out with the cup of salvation when problems and issues and suffering comes upon us. But why? So the word, the secret to it is, of course, nechnoim, because the Jewish people become humbled and subdued. And because they become humbled and subdued, mispalin, therefore they start praying. Lefichoch, Therefore God says to the Jewish people, last week we read in the portion of Kisovo, the curses, that if the Jews should deviate and live a life which is not in conformance with God's will, endless curses, God forbid, will come upon the Jewish people. Although the curses come upon you, that's what keeps you instead. That's what keeps you intact. And as the verse says, you're being afflicted to uplift you. That ultimately it should be good for you. We had read, the Torah says, Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael, as a man, as a father, disciplines his son, that's the way Hashem disciplines us. So the Orach Chaim HaKodesh explains, if a person sees another person's child misbehaving or doing terrible things, and they bother you, but you're not going to respond or intervene or react, but if your own child does the same thing, there's a reaction and there's a response. What's the difference? They're both doing the same wrong. The answer is, because one's your child, the other one's not your child. Because there's a special relationship between Klal Yisrael and Kodesh Baruch Hu, who are we to God? We are God's children. He values us as his children, as Moshe Rabbeinu says, we are God's children. Therefore, in terms of ourselves, when he sees that level of misbehavior, he reins in on us, he disciplines us. But what is disciplining? What is suffering? Suffering is not to destroy, but to the contrary, it's rehabilitation. Or it's to alert you that you're going off. I always give the example with a allegory, with a mushal. Person sees his son running head first towards a cliff, and he doesn't realize that if he keeps going at that speed, he's going off the cliff. And it's a point of no return. So the person picks up a tiny stone and throws it and whizzes by his ear to alert him, to get his attention. Man is so focused on going in his direction, doesn't even notice. Picks up a little larger stone, throws it, just tips his ear. A little twang. Person is so immersed in where he's going, doesn't even feel the slight pain. What do? Picks up a larger stone, throws it, aims it should hit him right in the center of the skull. His head moves. He feels a pain for a moment, just ignores it, keeps going. What do? This continues a little bit longer. He's running to his death. The person goes and picks up a larger stone, throws it into his back, knocks him to the floor, falls on his face, gets up, he's off on a gallop again. What do? What does he do? Takes a boulder, throws it at his legs, and his legs are pinned under the boulder. You think that would stop him? He's dragging the boulder. He's going in that direction. Until finally, you take a boulder, put it on a center where he can't move. He can't even wiggle. But why are you hurting him? Why are you being so cruel? Be cruel. If I don't stop him, where is he going? He's going to his death. He's going to the oblivion. But if it would be a stranger and have no relationship, you choose to act irresponsibly, live a life of whatever, of decadence, a depraved life, do what you want. But that's not my son. My son, I do whatever I can, that God forbid he should not self-destruct and destroy his life. So God intervenes. Regardless is the pain. But what is the value of the pain? He's afflicting you to uplift you. That it should be good for you ultimately at the end. The Jew has that because we are the Am Kodosh. There is an element of purity within the Jew and has a special soul. Unfortunately, it's enwrapped and coated with endless years of grime and impurity. And therefore, as a result of that, the nerve endings, the spiritual nerve endings don't sense what's on the outside of the person. So what do you have to do? 1,000 volt shock is not going to go through. It's too thick. The insulation. The person's entombed. You have to take about a 500,000 volt shock. That goes through. That will go through regardless of what he's wrapped in, regardless of the purity. This is the curses. That's the level of suffering. Only then do you touch that spiritual core of the Jew, and what happens when you touch him? Nichnoim. He becomes subdued, he becomes humbled. And when he becomes humbled, he realizes how foolish he's been, and he realizes where the salvation is. Mispalin, then they pray. And who do they pray to? They pray to God. But the Goyim, they don't have that spiritual core. So as much as you punish them, they bolt, and where do they go? They go the opposite direction. As they say, they don't get it. And as a result of that, let your wrath pour out on the nations, because they don't know you. Shem Hashem lo karu, they don't call out the name of God. But the Jew, it's just a question of what he has to endure before he comes around. That's the value of the klola. Moshe Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Klal Yisrael, although all the suffering comes upon you, you can be able to stand up. Today you all stand only because of that. You know, we say in Tehillim, who has the key to forgiveness? Only God could forgive you. The words of David, so that you should fear God. Knowing that God has that ability to release you, to rehabilitate you, therefore you fear Him. If He would not have that, you do your own thing. But if God can't reign in on you, and He has no relevance to your life, everybody's a free agent. Do what you want. But because the slicha, the forgiveness, slicha mechila, this is all rehabilitative process to restore the person. It's interesting. You find that the leper, he has to go chutz lamachne, he has to go outside of all the camps of Israel, even out of the camp of Israel. The verse is bodod yeshev, he has to sit in solitude. The equivalent of solitary confinement. He's not allowed to associate with anyone. And all the commentators explain the leprosy which is discussed in the Torah is not the degenerative disease of leprosy. And therefore, there's no healing to this. The only way you could actually recover, God has to bring the recovery to you. What's it based upon? Tshuva. And it says, Tomei, Tomei Yikra. He calls that Tomei. What does he call that Tomei? Tells everybody he's contaminated. So people should have mercy on him, and they should pray for his soul that he should recover. Because otherwise there's no recovery, because only Hashem could bring him back. That predicament, understanding that he's in a helpless state, and there's no way back unless God has mercy and brings him back. And therefore you're seeking out all the assistance you can, that people should pray for you, that they should have rachmanis on you, to understand your predicament. That experience humbles the person, and in that state of humility, he begs people that they should pray. He prays, but they should also pray. He feels he's not sufficiently worthy, that his tefillah will actually extricate him from his situation. Omer Abchanin Ba'Popo, Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God says, "Ve'olam lo ikisi umma v'shanisi bo." There was never a time that I had smitten a nation and I had to do it again. Aval atem b'nei Yaakov lo chilisem. But you, the Jewish people, you were not consumed through the suffering. Shenemar, chitze achal lebom. My arrows have been expended in them. Chitze kolim. My arrows have been expended, but they're not annihilated. They're not consumed through his suffering. What is it? It's like the archer with the bow and arrow. Moshel Madavadome, what is it now? Was to Legibor. Shemer Sakor, you have a professional archer, and he sets up a beam for target practice. Voyazorik Boas Achitzim, and he keeps shooting the arrows, bullseye into the beam. Chitzav Kolim Vakorobim Kom Medes. As many arrows he puts in that beam, the arrows ultimately are expended, but the beam's still in place. Same thing. All the wrath, all the punishment that Hashem brings upon Klal Yisrael, at the end of the day, the Midas HaRachman comes in because it's sufficient. But we remain intact. We're similar to the beam. Af Yisrael, Kozmachi Yisur Bod Aleim, when the suffering comes upon them, HaYisur Kolim Veim Bekom Ma'omdim Ve'enom Kolim. Lakach Nemar, HaFoch Rishon Ve'enom. The Pasuk says in Mishlei, when you scrutinize the record of a Rosh and he has to be punished, he's gone. Because he never does tshuva. Obeis tzaddikim, but it's the house of tzaddikim, which also you find people fail, Yamod, that will continue. Because they come to realization. Therefore, that's the beam. The suffering comes to an end, but the household stands. We find that at Sinai, God, before he offered the Torah to Klal Yisrael, to us, he offered it to the nations of the world. Could you imagine? God himself, the Creator, makes you an offer. How do you not take up the offer? If he's offering it, evidently, he's not doing it to mislead you or to limit you. It's in your best interest. Yet every nation of the world rejected the Torah that God offered them. You went to the Edomites. First thing they asked, what's it all about? You have to ask what it's about. If God's offering it, don't you understand? It's ultimately it's in your best interest. But they ask, what's it all about? Ma Kosovo, what's written in it? God says, Lo tirtzoch. Lo shall not murder. It says, it doesn't conform with our lifestyle. We have a blessing, Al Charpcho Tirchia. You know, we live by the sword. Goes to the Yishmaelim, they respond something else. It says, Lo tignov. We steal, we kidnap. Slave trade, that's part of our daily fare. Goes to the Persians. It says you should not commit adultery. Incest, that's their cup of tea. Each of them has their own life. They reject it. They come to Klal Yisrael. Nasa v'nishma. We accept unequivocally. They don't even ask what it's about. And immediately there's a heavenly voice that says, Mi gila rosel labanai, who revealed the secret to my children that they speak like angels, as the angel does, and then listens to the order, is committed to do the will of God, and listens to the order. Identically, we are committed to the will of God. We just have to be instructed what is the will. Therefore, we said Nasa v'nishma. But why did the Jews say Nasa v'nishma and the world did not say Nasa v'nishma? Evidently, we have a capacity, we have a sensitivity, because we descend from the Avos HaKadoshim, from the holy patriarchs, that we have a sense, a value of who God is. And we understand that the only purpose and the only value and the basis for every aspect of our lives is rooted in God. Therefore, there's no reason to ask. There's a trust. The nation of the world, their essence is not that. They don't have that soul. They have a different kind of soul. A very limited, minimal level of soul. Therefore, what are they? They're consumed with the physical people. So anything which compromises their essence, which is their physicality, they can't accept. So they suspect God is all spiritual. And he's asked them to accept his dictate. But maybe the dictate will compromise their physicality. Therefore they asked Makosaba, what is it all about? When he told them, they said, it's literally the antithesis of what we are. We can't accept it. Klaus, on the other hand, because their essence is their spirituality, and God is the source of everything, Nasav Nishma, this exactly conforms with who we are. Therefore, there's no reason to ask what it's all about. If the concept is Atem Dveikim B'Hashem Elokeichem Chaim Kulchem Hayom, whatever it takes to cleave to you, to attach to you, we accept. What is it? You'll tell us what it is. How we cleave. That's the difference. Therefore, as a result of that, when suffering comes upon nations of the world, what does suffering do? It compromises their physicality. When their physicality is compromised, what is their physicality? That's their essence. If it's their essence, what do? They bolt. And they look elsewhere. To the deities, to idolatry. Therefore, David says, allow your wrath to pour out on the nations of the world. They don't even know who you are. They have no relevance. They can't process it. Because that's their essence. Their essence has no relevance to spirituality. But Klal Yisrael, Kosishu Eso, when even in the time of great suffering, we lift the cup of salvation because we understand where is the salvation rooted and where does it emanate from. It emanates from HaKadosh Baruch Hu because we've unraveled, we peeled away all those layers of impurity, and we come to the core, and the core of the Jew is the spirituality, which is in his neshama. The Rambam rules in Hilchos Tshuva that regardless at what level a person sins, deliberate, defiant, inadvertent, if a person repents and confesses, he's fully forgiven. Regardless of what. And then the Rambam goes to delineate all the different types of sins. Positive command, negative commandment which carries liability, a spiritual excision, the death penalty, whether you go and you damage another person, you injure another person, and so on and so forth, or God forbid a person does something which is equivalent of a chil Hashem, he desecrates God's name, everything is atonable, except the different levels of involvement the person has to be fully atoned. The Rambam goes and explains this, but the Rambam says to be forgiven, to be rehabilitated, one has to confess. The mitzvah aseh is vidui. It's vidui. You have to have verbal confession. So we say now in the slichos, we say Oshamnu, Bagadnu. That's the confession. But the Rambam says, Ketzad Nitzavim. How does one confess? How does one confess? The Rambam says, On Hashem. The person says, I plead, I beg of you, God. Chotosi avisi poshati. I've sinned inadvertently, I've sinned deliberately, I've sinned defiantly. Lefanecho. Before you. You're speaking to God. I've sinned at various levels before you. Nichamti uboshti. I regret what I had done. I am ashamed of what I've done. And you articulate the actual sin. And I accept upon myself never to return there again. And the Rambam says that's mitzvah aseh of vidui. That's the positive commandment of confession. Okay? But the person says, I've sinned inadvertently, deliberately, defiantly, lefanecha, before you. Let's say he would have left out the word lefanecha. I've sinned A, B, C. I have remorse. I'm ashamed. I commit myself. What does he have to say that lefanecha? Before you. Of course it's before God. The Gemara tells us in one location, Yuma, that the Torah tells us that if a woman accepts Naziritehood upon herself, she's a Nazira, and she says she should be a Nazir, she's not permitted on a Torah level to drink wine, to cut her hair, and to contaminate herself. Let's say the husband had heard her making this vow, and unbeknown to her, he nullified her vow. The vow is nullified. If a girl up through the age of 12 and a half, her father hears the vow, and he nullifies it, it's nullified. Let's say the husband or the father nullified the vow, and the woman is not aware of the nullification, and she drinks wine, and she cuts her hair, believing she's in the zero, and believing she's violating her Naziritehood, and she contaminates herself. She'd say, regardless of what she believed she was doing, she did nothing wrong, because the father, the husband, already nullified the vow. She's not a Nazir. But yet the Torah concludes, Hashem yislach lo. God should forgive her. she needs slicha v'kapora. She needs forgiveness and she needs atonement. So the Gemara tells us that when Rabbi Akiva would read this, he would shed tears. Why would he shed tears? What did she do so terribly wrong? She did nothing wrong. She believed she was transgressing the word of God, but in reality she wasn't. So here we find, even when she did not transgress the word of God, she needs forgiveness and atonement. So when you really transgress the word of God, when you truly do the wrong thing, there's no question how much more you need God's mercy to be forgiven, to be rehabilitated. But the Gemara goes and draws from this an interesting case. A person likes to eat pork. He goes into a restaurant and he says, I'd like pork. And rather than serving pork, they serve him something which he thinks is pork, but it turns out to be venison, kosher meat. And he eats it with a gusto, with a desire, as if he's eating pork. And now you have another person, he purchases kosher meat. And rather than give him kosher meat, they give him pork, and he eats it. So factually he's eating non-kosher. But his intent definitely was not to eat non-kosher. Which situation is worse? So the Gemara says, kosher mihure avei me'avero. The thought to sin, where it manifests itself in an action, and you believe you're sinning, is worse than the sin itself, where you never wanted to sin. So the case where he eats non-kosher, kosher, where he thought he's eating non-kosher, he thinks he's eating pork, but he's eating kosher. The transgression there is worse than eating non-kosher when you believe you're eating kosher. Why? So the commentators answer this. Very interesting. When a person sins, let's say, deliberately or defiantly, what happens? Firstly, the substance he's doing, or the action, is lethal to your spirituality. It's like a person takes poison. He doesn't know it's poison. Whether you know or not, it's irrelevant how it's going to affect you. Because in its essence, it's lethal and destructive to one system. But what about, in addition to knowing it's poison, he takes it deliberately or defiantly? That's even, the crime is even worse. It's bad enough you're taking something where the substance is destructive, which you were instructed not to, but the attitude that you're defiantly going against the dictate of your master, or you're the priority. My needs supersedes the will of God. I will eat the non-kosher. That is worse than actually eating the non-kosher meat. So therefore, the one who believes he's eating non-kosher, although it turns out to be kosher, what was his intent? To defy God, to go against God. He's telling God, I am the priority, not you. The one who eats non-kosher, but he wanted to eat kosher, he's not interested in defying, going against the will of God. Unfortunately, mistakenly, he's eating non-kosher. The woman, although her Nazarethhood was nullified, and it's no longer in place, but factually, what did she want to do? I will go to the cemetery, I will drink the wine, I will cut my hair. Regardless of what God wants, because that's what I want. That's defiance, that's deliberate. That's worse than the sin itself. Hashem yislach lo. Hitzricha kapora, slicha kapora. She needs forgiveness and she needs atonement. That's what it's about. So let's talk. The Torah tells us that if a person steals on the QT and he's caught, not only does he have to compensate the person we victimized with the principal, he has to pay, there's a penalty, it's called kefil. He has to pay double. It's principal plus penalty, which is the equivalent of the principal. What about a person openly steals? An armed robber walks into a store, holds up in the public, and then he's caught, he only has to pay principal. You'd say, the man who is so brazen, he openly comes in with a weapon and holds up the person, we definitely should penalize him. If the person who's more meek, we penalize him, so the person who has this level of fear, he's fearless. He has no fear for anyone. We definitely should rein in on him. He should be penalized, but he's not. The liability is only restitution. It's principle, not penalty. Why? So the Gemara tells us the person who steals on the QT, he's showing he's more concerned, he's more afraid of people than God. God knows you're stealing. So if God knows you're stealing, so why are you stealing on the QT? The answer is because you're more afraid of people than God. That itself is a disrespect. For that we penalize you. You pay principal plus penalty. The person who is the armed robber who steals in the open, and he's fearless, he doesn't differentiate. God, people, it's all the same. Therefore, there's no reason to penalize him. So whenever you go and you ignore God and you live your life as if God doesn't exist, it's a much more serious penalty. And you value man's concern more than God's concern, a much more serious transgression. And because it's more serious, therefore you need a greater level of what? Of atonement. And therefore, there's penalty, besides principle. That's what it is. A person sins, speaks Lashon Hara, speaks Rechilos, tail-bearing, lies, steals, eats not kosher, whatever he does, which is contrary to the dictate of the Torah. God knows what you're doing. You're aware God knows you're doing. Whether you acknowledge it or you have a sense of it, it's irrelevant. But if you believe in God, you know God knows every aspect, every nuance of your behavior. So if God knows, how do you behave this way? You know why? Because God is irrelevant. I couldn't care less what God wants or thinks. You know what level of arrogance and defiance and disrespect that is? So over here we have two things. You have the sin, and then you have this level of disrespect. If it's lefonecha, if it's before God, how do you do it? How do you do it? The answer is, it's irrelevant. That's the answer. Irrelevant. You deserve to be reined in and punished. So therefore, when you do tshuva, it's not only enough to say, I ate not kosher, or I spoke Lashon Hara, or I violated the Shabbos. It's not enough. Ovisi chotosi poshati lefonecho. It's before you. That's part of the confession. I sinned before you. It's not only I sinned, but how did I sin before you? That's part of the sin. It's not only you did the wrong, but how do you do the wrong before Him? The lefonecho. That's what you have to regret. That's what you have to be ashamed of. How did you behave this way? Knowing that God knows, how do you behave this way? Well, I wasn't thinking. It's irrelevant what you're thinking. It's unacceptable. Therefore, when you do tshuva, I regret, I'm ashamed of what I've done. How do you sin in the presence of God? It's a busha. And that's a boshti. So it's not enough just to articulate the sin. Shabbos, non-kosher, whatever. But part of the articulation of the sin is the lefonecho. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, when he was on his deathbed, Yochanan ben Zakkai was the leader of the generation, Torah leader, after the destruction of Beis HaMikdash. And his students come to him, and they ask him for a bracha before he passes away. And he says to them, you should fear man as you should fear God as you fear man. That's what he says to them. You should have fear of God the way you fear man. So they would take them back. That's all. It's almost insulting. What kind of blessing is this? So he says, I want to ask you a question. When you do the wrong thing, do you do it in public or you do it in private, behind closed doors? Right? It's a lot easier to do it behind closed doors. Why? So evidently it's clear. You fear man more than you fear God, because one's your reputation. How would people see you? You're totally compromised if it becomes public knowledge when you did the wrong thing. But if you do it behind closed doors, so therefore you can't imagine the value of the bracha I'm giving you, that minimally you should fear God as you fear man. And if you have that, you have it all. That's what it's about. It's interesting. The Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos, "Hamispal v'shlomo shel malchus." You should pray for the welfare of government, because ilmoli moro. Because if there's no fear of government, each person would literally not first kill the other. You would swallow one another up alive. That's the level of anarchy and chaos there would be. Therefore, you should pray for law and order, fear of government, and therefore people will behave like human beings. Moral, ethical. Okay? So what do we say? If there's, why fear of government? Because there's punishment, there's retribution, there's law and order. But let's say a person has that, but that's only laws which are on the books. Those are civil laws or criminal laws, which the government legislate and promulgate. What about God's laws? What's going to bind you to there? You know, in the world, speaking Lashon Hara, there's nothing wrong with it. Lying, as long as you're not on the road, there's nothing wrong with lying. You may not be a quality person, but there's nothing wrong with lying. Well, many things there's nothing wrong. But for the Jew, it is wrong. And it's more than wrong. It carries serious liability. So what's the holdback? As Moroshel Malchus, fear of government is the holdback, is the safety gauge, that the person should behave like a civilized, moral, ethical human being. What's the safety net for the Jew to behave as a Jew should behave? As you have Moroshel Malchus, you have Moroshel Mayim. You have Mora, you have to fear God. The least level is Yirasa Onish. Ultimately, there's going to be retribution. God will punish you. At a higher level, it's reverence. Reverence for God. If God knows what I'm doing and sees what I'm doing, as I said, it's l'fanecho. The person's not going to sin. And it's guaranteed you won't sin. As you won't sin if there's physical retribution by the mortal court, and knowing and believing and internalizing the reality. And one has Yir Shamayim, he's not going to sin, because he can be reined in and compromised by the spiritual court, by Hashem. The Rambam writes that for a get, a divorce writ, to be valid, it has to be given consensually by the husband. If he's forced to give the get, it's coerced, it's not valid. What about if the Beis Din, the rabbinic court, evaluates the situation? They rule that the husband has to divorce his wife. And he absconds, runs away, they catch him, and they say, you must divorce her. He says, but I don't want to. He says, it's irrelevant. But the law dictates you must divorce her. And they go and they flog him and they beat him until he says, I agree, I consent to divorce her. And he gives her the get. It's a valid divorce. So Rambam asks, but we know the only reason why he says I'm in agreement to give it to her, because he couldn't tolerate the pain any longer. So why is this considered consensual? It should be considered a divorce under coercion. So Rambam says the will of every Jew, the core will of every Jew, is to do the will of God. That's what the will of every Jew is. Unfortunately, we have a Yitzhara, we have an evil inclination that we want to do what we want to do. So what happens? So once the person is beaten and the pain, and he says yes, now he's doing what he truly wants. Now all of a sudden he has clarity. He's doing what he truly wants to do. Which is what? Which is do the will of God. Years ago there used to be a person who used to come here, and he was a phenomenal storyteller. One of the wealthiest people in the world, Jews in the world, lived in Europe, and he told over a story, and this really is Atim Nitzavim Kulchem, what the Chazal say, that the suffering is mamides eschem. It actually establishes you. So this person had a donkey, which was a miracle donkey. Donkey is a beast of burden. So if a farmer has a good donkey, and the donkey follows directions, he's way ahead of the game. The farmer. So this farmer heard that this certain person has a miracle donkey. You load up the donkey, regardless how much you load him up, all you have to say to the donkey, please donkey walk, the donkey walks. Nothing more than that. No hesitation. The farmer says, this is my dream. I have to purchase it. Meets with the owner. He says, whatever you ask, I'll pay that price. Pays for the donkey, takes it back to his farm, loads it up. All you have to, you're supposed to say, please donkey. He says, please donkey. carry the load from here for the next 10 miles. Donkey doesn't budge, doesn't move off its spot. Pulls the donkey, screams at the donkey, hits the donkey, donkey's not moving, not moving. He feels he was duped, he was cheated, and this man convinced him, goes running to the person, says, you cheated me, you're a thief. This is impossible. You must be doing something wrong. I'll come back with you to your farm, and I want to show you I want you to show me how you're instructing your donkey to move. He loads up the donkey, he says, donkey, please, donkey, walk. Donkey doesn't walk. Starts pulling it. He says, no, I forgot to tell you something. There's a prerequisite which you have to do even before you say the word please. He picks up a block of wood off the ground, slams it into the temple of the donkey, and after he slams it into the temple of the donkey, he says to the donkey, please, donkey. That donkey walks. Atem nitzom hayom kulchem. Sometimes Hashem has to twist our arm because we think that we're free agents. It's God's world, and we're free to do what we want to do. God created a world that we should be animals. We should be intellectual animals. Is that what He created the world for? What does God need such a world? There are enough animals. He doesn't need intellectual animals. What's the value of an intellectual animal? He wants people should be worthy and deserving of reward by doing His will and compromising their physicality. What is bechira? What is free choice? Man is enjoyed free choice. Not to do what he wants to do, but not to do what he wants to do. That's free choice. That's choosing good. Man is inclined to do the wrong thing. So what should choice be? Not to do what you want to do, but to do what God wants you should do. And that's the right choice. And that's spirituality, going against the grain. But to be an intellectual animal, what does God need you for? You have plenty of animals. And God didn't create the world for the animals. He created the world for His glory. And if you address and acknowledge His glory, then you've succeeded. You're deserving of the ultimate. You know, people, they pride themselves that they're ethical and moral and respectful and decent. Okay? They would never embezzle. They will never take anything that's not theirs. Okay? Let's check them. Okay? Person doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe the world's God. The world is God's world. Person he believes in God. Believes in God. And he's semi-traditional. That means he's not correctly following the dictates of the Torah. And you say to him, do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe God is the one who wills existence and provides it? Yes. Now, David Mel says in Tehillim, L'Hashem Oretz Loah. The world in its entirety is God's. Could you imagine? A person owns a $50 million apartment on Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue, fully furnished. And the person is very wealthy, spends 2 weeks in the apartment a year. The rest of the year, he's somewhere in Europe. So the person figures, I have to rent an apartment. I'll fashion a plaque, which is the equivalent of his plaque with my name on it, with his own name on it. He'll get a locksmith to change the lock. And for 11 months a year, he'll move into the apartment. Nobody will know. Doesn't hurt the person, not cost the man in person. And before he comes back, he'll set everything to be back perfectly. And he becomes the baron living in this apartment. People hear about it. They cringe. How dishonest. How could you do such a thing? Not, aren't you afraid you're going to be caught? You're doing something which is dishonest. Where do you pick up this level of arrogance and brazenness to do such a thing? No. You belong behind bars. She said, the person will ask you a question. God created this world for His glory. When you eat food, do you acknowledge Him as the master? On Saturday, when you travel, He said, it's my day of rest. Remember the day of Shabbos to sanctify it. Keep the Shabbos, not to desecrate it. The person says, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's God's world. Don't you realize you're a trespasser? God says you can only live in this world if you play by my rules. You benefit from this world. It's like eating something which was consecrated. You're a thief. So what's the answer? I'm not really a thief. You are a thief. You're worse than a thief. Because you're stealing this, you're stealing from God's domain. When you take from somebody, you're stealing from man's domain. You're a thief? I don't think so. Okay, you don't think so. You mean you're holy and righteous, everybody else, because they don't do according to what you think they should do, then all of a sudden they're immoral and unethical. We're talking about a double standard here. Minimally a double standard. The people, they can live with their own conscience. They can do it. How do they do it? Answer is very simple. Because if you don't have an appreciation or a sense of what God wants or what God is, all we're talking about is abstract intellectualism. Abstract intellectualism does not touch a person. It's like talking about something out in the cosmos. There's something out there. What is it? There's kind of intelligence out there. What is it? Don't know. Some people get excited about it. Most people say, you know something, I don't have time to be busy with that. That kind of nonsense. Abstract. You know something, I understand it, I respect it, but if you believe it, you behave differently. In the Pasuk, there's a Pasuk in this week's Parsha which is an allusion to Elul. Omol Hashem es levovcha es levav zarecha. This is an acronym for Elul. Es levovcha aleph lamid, the es levav zarecha, and the heart of your son. Hashem will circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your progeny. Elul. This is an allusion for tshuva. That a Jew has to do tshuva during the month of Elul. Circumcision of the heart. So the Ramban writes over here, Nachmanides, Zesha Omru, Habol Litar Mesainoso. A person who wants to purify himself, he will merit divine assistance to be purified. Maftichacho. God promises you, guarantees you, Shetoshev Elo B'chol Levovcha. V'hu you will have a full recovery, full return, and not only that, he will help you. He will assist you to come back. From the time of beginning of creation, man could do anything he wants. This is what we call bechira chavshis, free choice, free will. Tzaddik or Rosha, you want to be devoutly righteous, you want to be evil, anything you want, you write your own ticket, your own script. Chozman haTorah kain, and when the Torah is in effect, that's the reality. Kedei she'elem schus b'vchirosam b'tov, they should be meritorious when they choose good, the right thing. V'onesh b'ritzosam b'ra, and they deserve punishment when they choose evil. Av l'mosa Mashiach, when Mashiach will come, tiyah ha'b'chira b'tov l'hem teva. Man no longer has the ability to choose to do evil. A person naturally will do good. No longer choice. Lo yitur lem halev lamash in a roy v'lo yachzot, the heart, the emotion, what draws it, the heart draws. It will not be in the capacity of the heart anymore to go in that direction. The amila and his kereskan, that's when I will circumcise the heart. Ki achemdo v'atayva orlas halev. You hear this? The desire and the yearning and craving and wanting something which you have no right to, that's classified as oral, that's the covering of the heart. Umola leiv hu shelo yachman b'litzaveh, and the circumcision of the heart is the person no longer craves, he no longer desires things which are in contradiction to God's will. He will return and be reinstated to a level before the chet of Adam Rishon. Min urov utzrichem lamidosam. No, before means before he sinned as a child. Elashis battle yitzram bizman ahu legamri. The evil inclination will come to an end, will be nullified. And he quotes a pasuk. Chenemer b'Yechezkel v'nasatchem leiv chodosh. At the end of time, you will receive a new heart. V'ruach chadosho. Etei b'kirvchem, a new spirit I will put in your midst. V'asisi es Hashem b'chukai teilecho, Va'leva chodosh. What is when it says, I will give you a new heart? Yirmos letivo, that's one's inclination, that's one's nature. Va'ruach lechevitz l'rotzon. And the spirit is what are you interested in? V'zosha omru, higia shonim asher lo toma ein li ben chefetz. The time will come, the years, when man will have no longer any interest. There's a pasuk in Koheles, words of Shlomo, Elamos Mashiach, very important. She'ein be'em lo schus lo chova. After Mashiach comes, you will not be accredited for your actions and behavior, because you no longer have choice. Because you normally do good, you have no control but to do only good. Ki Mosa Mashiach lo ye'odom chefetz avol yaseh b'tivo hamase aroi. Person will naturally do what's appropriate. Therefore, there's no merit, there's no demerit. There's no demerit because he's not doing wrong, and there's no merit because it's not your choice. The Rambam writes in Hilchos Tshuva, why is a person deserving of good that he makes the right choice? Because he didn't have to make the right choice. It was only his own, through his own discretion and his own decision, did he make the right choice. And when he sins, why is he culpable for punishment? He didn't have to sin because he chose to succumb to his temptation to sin. Merit or chova, or detriment, is all dependent by will, by interest now. It's very interesting. We all pray for Mashiach. What happens when Mashiach comes? The clock stops. Wherever your record is locked in at that level. Locked in. So let's say you were a 20% achiever and you're supposed to be a 100% achiever. There's no chance to go beyond 20%. You're locked in that for all eternity. You will never again be able to rise above 20%. Before Mashiach comes, that you have choice, there's a chance you do tshuva. You can go up to 90, you go up to 95% success. So why are we praying for Mashiach? One of the brachos of Shemona Esrei is Semach Tov Avdecho. Eiros Hatzmiach. We want Mashiach to come quickly. But for us, it'll be disastrous. We're going to be behind the 8-ball miles and miles that you can't even see the 8-ball. But why? What are we doing? You know what the answer is? We're saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're irrelevant. All that makes a difference is Kavod Shamayim. Because once Mashiach comes, there's no evil. Lo Hashem al-Melech HaKol Oretz. That's what we're saying to Hashem. Forget us. Our predicament is irrelevant. All that matters is your kavod, is your glory, that you should be revered and loved. That's all that matters. But if a person is sincere in that, going into a shutdown mode has greater value than having a choice and making the right choice. Because he's saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm giving it all up for you. This is like dying al Kiddush Hashem. When a person dies al Kiddush Hashem, why is it so? It's the ultimate level. Because you're giving it all up for God. When you pray for Mashiach, you're giving it all up for God. Therefore, that's the equivalent of Kiddush Hashem. That's what you're doing. It's a tremendous accomplishment. They tell over a story. The Vilna Gaon was always meticulous and exact in the mitzvah that should be done in the most advanced level. So we had Hiddur mitzvah in the most elaborate, beautiful way. And he already sent out an agent after Shavuos to seek out an esrog, that he should purchase for him a beautiful esrog. That year was a disastrous crop, and the agent couldn't find an appropriate esrog. First, he finally heard that in some town, a very rich man purchased an esrog which is very unique and beautiful. He goes to the person, and he says, we'd like to buy it for the Vilna Gaon. And he was a very wealthy man, and it was truly beautiful, exquisite esrog. And the rich man says, it's not for sale. He says, we'll pay anything you want. He says, I don't need money. I have enough money. I'm not interested in the money. I want the esrog. And he pestered him. You real to go, and he needs an esrog. He says, okay, I'll make a deal with you. I'll sell it to the Vilna Gaon for a share in the world to come. He gives me his share in the world to come. He's welcome to have the esrog. If not, I'm not releasing the esrog. So what do you do? So the agent figured He has to close the deal. I'll purchase the esrog for the Vilna Gaon share in the world to come. Could you imagine? After he made that decision, took the esrog, he was shaking in his boots, his agent. He wasn't authorized. Was he authorized to exchange the Vilna Gaon's share in the world to come for the esrog? He hasn't arrived yet back in Vilna. Finally, he's come to Vilna. And as he approaches the outskirts of Vilna, he's trembling. Of course, he has to share this with the Vilna Gaon, what he did. That the esrog cost him his whole life, his life's accomplishment. His share in the world to come. Finally comes in to the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna looks at the esrog. It's amazing. He's never seen such beauty. And he told him what he had to go through. This is a bad crop, this and that. He says, by the way, what did it cost you? What did you pay for it? He says, I paid for it your whole life. Your share in the world to come. All your spiritual accomplishments. That's what the esrog cost. The Vilna Gaon says, Baruch Hashem, I finally could do a mitzvah lishma. That's what he says. So what I said was, when I heard the story, the Vilna Gaon saying that, I'm willing to give it. Hashem wants I should take an esrog. You have to take that citron on the first day, the 4 species. That's what God says. If that's what God wants, I'm giving it all away. You know what that means? I'm willing to give it all up for Hashem's kavod, for His glory, for His honor. That's the ultimate. And that's the same thing. That has greater value than what we're giving up. That we pray for Mashiach. It's one of the 13 tenets of Jewish belief. It's not enough you believe in Mashiach. I wait for him every day. When is he coming? We want him to come. But if he comes, we're gone. We're at a loss. We forfeited everything. But if a person truly is there, he's over the top. The Gemara tells us in Shabbos that one of the questions they ask the person after he ascends, after 120 years, they ask him, did you set times to study Torah? Did you act honestly in business? See, peace in Yeshua. Were you waiting for the salvation? Were you waiting every day for the coming of Mashiach? That's the question. That's one of the questions that we put to every one of us. See, Pisa means, it's not, did you sing, we want Mashiach now. That's not what we're talking about. See, Pisa Yeshua. We at Sofa. Do it Sofa, like it says the Chofetz Chaim, you go to the window, look to see maybe Sheikh is coming down the street. Like Harat Sofim. It's gazing. You're always looking to wait, maybe it's coming. Every moment. But it's insanity. If he comes, we're goners. Every one of us. We're locked into our limited record. The answer is no. See, peace Lushu means you were craving that he should come. You couldn't wait to come. That means Kavod Shamayim is greater than your own personal predicament. God's glory and honor is greater than what you're worth. When you value the Master more than you value yourself, then you're deserving to have a relationship with the Master. Because you're willing to give it all up for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why, Kiddush Hashem, you're willing to die with your everything, where you can't go further. Whether it's your family, yourself, or anything that you aspire to comes to an end in that moment. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, then you're truly a Kadosh. Person who dies al Kiddush Hashem, he's truly a Kadosh. What's Kedusha? What is Kedusha rooted in? It's a relation with God. If God is, you become part of God, then you have Kedusha. And because the person was willing to give it all up for that, that's Kedusha. The theme on Rosh Hashanah is not, it's a day of judgment. There's not one mention of our own situation. All we speak about is the world should submit to God, should bow, prostrate themselves, should be united to accept God as the omnipotent being, to be the Melech, to be the King of the world. That's our supplication on Rosh Hashanah. What about us? Day of judgment. We're on the chopping block. Satan is prosecuting like nobody's business. Satan. He's the kateger. How do we not talk about ourselves? The answer is Hashem's. All that's important now is your kavod, is your glory. That's all. Kadosh Baruch Hu hears that. He says to Satan, you hear what my children are talking about. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. Silences him. They tell of a story, the Chofetz Chaim had a student from Germany in Radin, and somebody had planted among his belongings sketches of the military installations of the Polish government, Russian. And so they arrested the boy. They had a raid. They found this in his personal effects, these sketches. He was a spy. And because he was part of the Chofetz Chaim's yeshiva, Chofetz Chaim was arrested too. He was harboring a spy. Made some kind of collusion here. Chofetz Chaim is taken to Moscow. He's put on trial. We're talking about the death, or minimally to be sent to Siberia. So they needed witnesses to testify for his integrity. So a person gets up, and the prosecutor was a rabid anti-Semite, because that was his job to prosecute, especially if he could prosecute a Jew. And the judge says to the witness, "Could you tell me something about this rabbi?" He said, "I want to tell you a story. He was once in Vilna in the train station, and somebody had pickpocketed him and lifted his wallet. And the rabbi, when he realized it, he began running after the thief, screaming after him, 'I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you.'" So he said, is it possible that such a man, he should harbor a spy and act so disrespectfully to the host country where he lives? Is it possible such a thing? It's not possible. This is the lawyer of the Chofetz Chaim, the defense attorney. The prosecutor says to the judge, this rabid anti-Semite, says, "Your Honor, could you believe such a story? Do you believe the story could be true?" He says, "I don't know if it's true or not, but those kind of stories, they don't tell about me and you." That was his response, and he was vindicated based on that. So therefore, it's unheard of. In the day of judgment, God forbid, l'chayim or l'misa, life or death. And what do we talk about? We're talking about only God's glory. It's unheard of. So sudden, what are you talking about, my children? Who's like the Jewish people? There's only one such people in this world. Nobody exists like them. The world looks at us like we're insane. We've gone to the stake endless times over. Endless, throughout history. Why? Convert and forget about it. No, we die al Kiddush Hashem. Because that's all that matters. We're willing to give it all up. So if the Jew is willing to give it all up, that's the ultimate in Kedusha. And therefore that's the schus, that's the merit. We merit on Rosh Hashanah to merit to have a Ksivah Sima Tova.